Welcome to MING Presents The Re-Up, a conversation with the artistic mind.
Yo.
What's the word?
What's going on, brother?
I'm good. Man, Friday needed to start at like 10 a.m. this morning. I'm telling you, I'm burnt.
Yeah, no, me too. I woke up around 7 and kind of went back to sleep. I've been working out, so my lower back is just killing me. And
Old man problems.
I'm using muscles I haven't used in a long time or never. So
yeah, but you're looking good though, man. You're looking thin.
I'm trying, brother. Trying to keep it up. I actually put on some weight, so it sucks.
Well, that's all right though, because right now it's like the thing about, because I lift I train a lot too, and you can't always be losing weight. Sometimes you gain weight because you're gaining muscle. Sometimes you gain weight because you're stressed. You can't be crazy about that stuff.
Yeah.
It makes you nuts if you do.
Reading up on stress and fucking all this, how it affects your body and all this shit. So, I'm trying to balance.
Is your girl a trainer? I see that she trains too. What's the story? She's just into it. She's just healthy.
Yeah, she's just healthy. Yeah.
That's
But we both gain weight. We're both trying to get back in shape. We got quarantine bodies.
My only downfall is after a week of all this with the kids and trying to stay sane is that, I hit the alcohol a little bit too hard. So then I got to deal with that.
Yeah, I don't do that during the week, but on the weekends I'll make 1 or 2 cocktails. That's what I'm gonna do tonight. Tonight I'm gonna make me a gin and tonic, and I'm good.
So you're like 1 or 2 cocktails. I'm lucky if the bottle doesn't disappear. I'm telling you, it's terrible.
Really?
It's that DJ lifestyle but not going out.
I'm being a little modest. I'll have more than 2, but I'm not trying. Get crazy.
That's funny though. So what are you working on? What'd you work on this week?
So I'm just working on album stuff, a couple of different productions. I'm doing a collab with Gary Richards, the Structo. I'm doing a song right now with Ty Dolla $ign's little sister, actually. He got vocals from her.
Nice.
So literally just was doing that today. Album stuff, remixes. I just did a remix for Sam Sparrow that came out today. Something for Phil Weeks on Rob Soul that came out today. That's it, man. Just trying to stay productive and creative and trying to crank it out. Do you
want to talk a little bit about the album that you're working on? Because I don't know if that's under wraps, the concept is under wraps, or if it's something you want to talk about, because I think it's important, but not maybe for a later date.
Yeah, I could talk about it. So, it's still far ahead, but in brief, it's basically I wanted to do a record, a house record out of the U.S. with U.S. influences based out of here. I flew to Atlanta and started have Dallas Austin executive producing the record. And I wanted it to have a narrative that has kind of been lost or misconstrued or not known, is that house music and techno is from the U.S. And God bless the U.K. and Europe for embracing it and helping us, all of us, with the careers that we have. But, we should always maintain the narrative that it is ours. And that's how movement starts. We don't really have that electronic dance music movement here in the U.S. because everything is they're perceived to be transplanted from Europe. Kids don't understand that techno is from Detroit. House music has its origins in New York, New Jersey, and Chicago. Electro, Miami bass, etc. So I wanted to do an album that reflects everything that has to do with us here in the U.S.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the correlation between house and hip hop, it's always been there. We can go back to Jungle Brothers, I'll House You, to Queen Latifah, Come Into My House, or How Do I Love Thee, or Craig G Turned His House Into a Home, or Special Ed, the club scene, so on and so forth. Tribe Called Quest, Black is Black, on Warlock as well at the time. People don't understand or don't remember or don't even know that Todd Terry released Jay-Z's first album, Reasonable Doubt, on Freeze before it went to Def Jam. So there's always been a connection there. So I want to also, bring that to the forefront as well.
It's funny because the other connection is like classic breaks and rare groove breaks that made its way into house music at a higher tempo or at a different tempo. and then adding the 4 on the floor to that, but still having it as an element that's behind tons of house tracks. Something that's also never talked about is that how much rare groove and hip hop and soul is sampled and put in house music still. But people don't talk about those elements of where they come from. Like when I was doing drum and bass, that was the core of drum and bass, is that you learned all the breaks. So you kind of had a library and a vernacular about all the different, this is the amen, this is, this is, right. Yeah. So you start building all these different breaks and you're playing them at a faster tempo. But when people realize that those are really from soul records, like regular people,
James Brown,
it's mind blowing for them, right?
Yeah.
But then all that's, James Brown, everything, like you name it. And then that music, that stuff is still in house music, but nobody actually knows that either. If you're not a maker of house music or a producer, like people don't hear those classic breaks and all that stuff that's in there. And to some degree, it's kind of like I don't want to say it's a lost art, but because people haven't grown up with that music, they'll never understand where those grooves come from.
Yeah.
How a break sets off a straight 4, 2 and 4, how that becomes the swinging beat as opposed to just something that's just boom, bap, boom, bap, and then boom.
The culture of understanding where breaks come from is lost too. We as DJs early on, yourself, myself, and everybody, all our peers, we learned where those breaks came from because we had to kind of dig and buy the vinyl and go, oh, this is this break, this is the amen break, and this breaks come from there. How many people used the chic loop in the beginning to make records, so it's just part of the process of learning how to DJ is understanding the break, but I don't think that craft or that art is kind of lost. Kids don't know where stuff comes from,
except for the diggers. You know what I actually have, which I'm going to release at some point, give it away or make it some sort of special thing, is that I have all of the classic breaks that I've sampled forever. Like I have maybe it's 250 or so breaks that I've been slowly putting in a Logic file in their original form and then on the grid and then locked to the grid so that every single break can be used on the grid, because kids need this shit on the grid these days. And so you can just export them at whatever tempo you need.
That's dope.
Yes. Like at first I was just doing it for myself because, whatever, I'll give it to you. I'll give it to all the producer friends. But then I was like, maybe this is a cool thing for people to go back and learn. Like, wait, that's where that actually comes from?
Yeah. I think that's just, we have a great tool with Who Sampled. These kids, we keep saying kids, anyone could go learn where shit comes from. Because it's not just kids, it's people that are our age that don't know.
I think the term kids is that when you have kids yourself, you are no longer a kid, hopefully.
Yeah.
When you say kids, people coming up, new producers, people who haven't been through the decades yet. Yeah.
These cats.
These kids.
Yeah.
Listen, I use Who Sampled still. I love that site. Sometimes I'll be like doing I recently did a track called Loco, and I wanted to find that original horn that was used in the Cypress Hill. Don't you know I'm loco? So I went to Who Sampled to find the original record where that came from, so I could sample it from that to put it in my track and not go to Cypress's track to get that.
Right. Get it? Yeah, of course. Yeah. No, I use that as a tool too. It's a great tool. It's a great tool just to learn as well. Listen. You and I probably have tons of sessions and vault stuff. Like I have a drive put away that is multi-tracks. Like I'm talking everything from Def Leppard to Stacks, all the Stack sessions.
The Stack sessions, that's a good one.
I'm talking gigs and gigs, but I've never dove into it and I never took anything from it because I had so much respect for it. Like I would bring up and listen. Like I actually just I have tons of Boston multi-tracks, and I just did a record with Hashing, the drummer from Boston. His daughter is singing on a track of mine. And I told her, when I met her, I actually didn't know that was her dad. She's actually married to The Rock, believe it or not, too.
Get out of here.
Yeah. So I didn't know who she was when we were in the studio working. And then she followed me on Instagram, and I read her last name. I'm asking, and I said, was your dad the drummer for Boston? She's like, yeah. I was like, what? And then during this session, I was like kind of freaked out. I was like, whoa, this is so dope. And I told her, I said, when I get back home, because I was in Atlanta, I said, when I get back home, I'm going to go into my files and give you all the multi-tracks of your dad's music, like More Than a Feeling, everything, all the Boston stuff, so that you can isolate his drums and just listen to it and bug out. And she was just like, what? And I did that. And I turned out I had like 10 different Boston songs, multi-track. So I sent all to her. She was super grateful. So
yeah, we got to re-up on that, because I had a bunch. I don't have them anymore, but I did the same thing. I had like all these classic records, these multi-tracks, and because there was something mental with that, which was like going in and listening to all of the multi-tracks by themselves and listening to how raw they were and how not perfect they were, and how by themselves I was like, wow, there's a lot of, I don't want to say garbage, but for today you wouldn't leave as much raw stuff in there.
Yeah. I have Stand Back, the multi-tracks, and all you hear when Stevie Nicks is singing is her heels tapping on the floor in the vocal booth. So she's like, hear the heels. I mean, it's loud as shit. And then a lot of people don't know is that the keyboards in that song was played by Prince. And what happened was Jimmy Iovine produced the record. She wanted to make, when you listen to Stand Back, it sounds exactly like Little Red Corvette, because she wanted to make Little Red Corvette. Like that was the premise. It's in the same progression, the same key. And she told Jimmy, because they were dating, I guess he was hitting it.
Yeah.
I want Prince on the record. He found out that Prince was in LA, some studio. He got in contact with him and the studio he was at and said, you want to work on a session for Stevie, our song? He said no. This is how the story was told to me.
So Prince said no.
Prince said no. So
of course he said no.
Said no, and then I guess he had a change of heart, and he wound up going to the studio to find him. And I guess they went out to eat or to lunch or something, whatever. He goes in, and the engineer's there, and the engineer's like, "Oh shit, Prince is here." So he goes, "Let me hear what you guys been doing." So he just plays and he says, "Right, record me," and he turns on the OB8 and he just plays like 2 or 3 or 4 passes of the Stand Back synth chords on the OB. And I have those in that session. It says Prince take 1, Prince take 2, take 3. And you literally hear him start kind of fiddling around and trying to find his groove. And he lays down the chords and the progression, the synth progression for Stand Back.
That's amazing.
That's really crazy to hear.
Like, the two, or you just gave me 2 stories, but one was I had the Michael Jackson session stems.
Phil Weeks is up. What's up, Phil?
Hey.
Yeah.
I had so I had the Michael Jackson session stems, and what I was amazed about was how pitchy. I think it was "I'll Be There." "I'll Be There" is mad all over the place, like the vocal.
Young, right?
What?
No. He was young when he did that. So
yeah, but when you listen to the production as a record, it sounds great. It's like it's a thing, right? It's got a vibe to it. But the stems themselves, I was like, woo, and that gave me a lot of insight into being a producer, which was, don't overanalyze the thing by itself. Listen to it in context, because in context, there's a lot of flavors that it might add, even if it's out of key, even if it's slightly rubbing this way or the other. So now when I collaborate with somebody, if I get stems that are slightly out of key or something like that, like a synth sounds funny, and I'll think, well, maybe they're tuning it at a different tuning. I'll hit them up first to be like, is this supposed to be this detuned? Because if I'm going to tune a vocal over it, you know what I mean? Just to find out if maybe they're doing that on purpose, or if they don't know, then I just fix it.
Like some harmonic.
I have a funny Prince story that I had a friend of mine, Don Piper, who was in this band, the Don Piper Situation. This is way back, whatever. This is early MING and FS days, maybe after our first or second album. And out of the blue one day, Prince was playing at the Garden. So Prince had this big show at the Garden. And then I saw Don, I was doing some recording with him, and he was like, yo, do you want to go see Prince at Tramps? Was it Tramps?
Yeah, that turned into Centrofly.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you want to go see Prince at Tramps tonight? And I'm like, what? He's playing the Garden tonight. He's like, no, look, I've got a guest, like I've been invited to this show at Tramps. Do you want to go? And I'm like, my inclination is to be like, no, because we're not going to get in. It's going to be a shit show, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
But he's like, just go, meet me at the door. I'll get you in. It'll be cool. So it was like a Friday night. I go, there's a line around the block. I mean, it's like, there's no way I'm getting in. But I'm like, all right, I'll go to the front, see what's happening. I get to the front of the line. Don is there. He's like, come on, let's go in. We go in front of the whole line, it's whatever. We go inside, there's maybe 50 people. And you know how big Tramps is, it's big.
Yeah.
So we get inside. About 10 minutes later, they shut the doors and it's done. There's like 100 people in this club. He just leaves everybody outside. I'm sitting at the bar waiting. I'm having a drink, being like, this is crazy. I'm in like a huge, like 1,000-person club with 100 people.
Yeah.
To the right of me is Spike Lee.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, just as a New Yorker, you kind of ignore, you know, like Spike was big at this time. This is like his prime. He's got a New York Times under his shoulder. He's got his suit on. You know, he's full on Spike Lee. I'm having my drink. He nods at me. I nod at him. You know, I'm not really going to talk to Spike Lee at this point. I'm like, whatever this guy's doing. Prince comes out, and he's on the other side. So now I'm flanked by Prince and Spike Lee. They're all nodding at each other. Nobody's saying anything. It's like this really weird whatever. Prince has these massive guards with him. So like you don't even, you know, the stories you hear about Prince is like, don't even look at him. He's a freak.
Yeah.
So I'm just being cool, whatever. They go off. 5 minutes later, Questlove comes out on stage. D'Angelo's on keyboards. Prince is on guitar and singing. And that's how it starts. And then as the other musicians from the tour started showing up, and then he locked the doors, played for like 2.5 hours. Yeah. It was like being connected to the source. It was insane.
Yeah. No, I mean, tons. That's what he used to do. So every show he did in every city, he will go to a little bar, lounge, or little club and lock it out and just play. And sometimes play for 4, 5, 6 hours.
And this is after playing a stadium show, which is insane.
After a stadium show, and he would do that all the time, which is amazing. I mean, wow. Yeah.
I mean, but seeing them play was amazing because what was the big D'Angelo song at that time?
Brown Sugar? No.
Yeah, it was Brown Sugar. And they were trading on Brown Sugar. That was...
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
I mean... You know...
Crazy.
Even Questlove had this look on his face of like... You know what I mean? Like, just...
Because that was probably early on when he first started doing those. He did so many of those, like, over the course of his lifetime, that, you know, like these spur-of-the-moment Prince parties, basically, that I'm sure now he's like, you know, he's got stories. He's got Prince stories out the wazookie. But that's amazing, man. That's a really good story. You know, that I don't have any Prince stories. So the only time I ever physically saw Prince was at Glam Slam in Miami when it was still, and he's so tiny. Like he was just this tiny human being.
And on high heels that are like bigger than anything your girl would wear.
Yeah. So that's my only interaction with him, like physically ever in my life. But he's amazing, man.
Yeah. You know, it'd be really interesting now that we're talking about. Oh, so the thing about having those master tapes from people like Michael Jackson and you have Boston, I think because you can see behind the curtain, it almost feels like taking from those and sampling from them is sort of forbidden. You feel like you're lucky enough to have them.
Yeah.
But on the other sense, you're like, yeah, but I'm not really supposed to have all of this.
Yeah. Well, see, what's funny about those, I have a lot of multis, and there was a time where I just collected them. So all these producer friends and different people, we would trade and swap. And we used to reference them for inspiration or when people came over, like if you came over, I know you would appreciate them. So I would share them with people that I knew would really appreciate these multi-tracks. And that's as far as it went. So it was like, oh, cool. Let's, grab a beer. Check this out, man. And let's check this out.
That's exactly what it's like. You geek out to them kind of.
I would geek out to them all the time. And that's it. And and I would only break them out for certain times or certain people. But now I'm like, let me go back and, maybe take the, count those snares and take this or that kick or that groove, or there's that guitar in there. Why not? I had, and I still have so much respect for it, but now I'm like, let's go in there and just kind of borrow
I get that too, because now I feel like historically when people cared about the lineage of records and when that's the tie was still there, you felt much more connected to the art itself, the band. But now I feel like everyone is so distant, even though everyone feels like they're close to the band. It's just your distance because there's no
Yeah.
The lineage is gone.
Well, I had a respect even for samples where, like, I grew up where if I knew one of my peers sampled a record like Sneak or Amon, I wouldn't sample it, meaning that's out. So that was done. You know what I'm saying? So if somebody already did it, I couldn't do it or nobody else could do it. So when I hear all these kids now sampling like there's same sample over and over and over again, I'm like, oh. But I grew up in that world where if Sneak had a record out like the Polyester EP and he sampled "Show Me the Way," I was like, okay, he did that. He flipped it. It's done. Like you can't touch that again.
You know the weird thing that I've seen happen recently or over the last, I'm sure you've seen this too, is like, you know how we all make our special versions of songs, the VIPs that aren't really released, or you make your own, you're making like bootleg mixes that you play for your live sets that are special for like the junior, like I know some of the stuff that you play, I know what they are, and I wouldn't go home and make that because I heard you do it. I've heard people take those mixes and then go and do them and release them.
Yeah, people do that. Yeah,
that's a kind of funny thing now. Like you see people calling each other out for that, but it's like.
But it also plays a part too. Like I know that it's been a long time since we had a Bucketheads, right? So I know I wouldn't go and sample Chicago and do a Bucketheads because Kenny already did it. But then some kid that doesn't know that and is inspired and goes and samples Chicago and he does a version of Bucketheads, right? Which he doesn't really know that it was. I mean, it was a massive record. How you don't know? I don't know, but it's possible.
But I think that's even. I'm talking about you and I play a set tonight. You play your boots. Yeah. I play my boots. But then I go home and go take what I heard from you and I make a record and I go get it signed and I license it and do that on you. That's what I'm talking about. People doing that stuff. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
There's no shame. I mean, I hear records where they're taking vocals from classic house records and it's like it's already hard drive deep inside and then some kid samples deep inside and they'll release it and they'll call it deep inside. I'm like, that, what are you doing? Yeah, I guess it's lack of creativity and a lack of exploration. I think nobody's really digging to find gems or find unique samples or unique things or creating unique things out of samples. Think about how Daft Punk would chop up all their stuff. You wouldn't even know unless you read the credits and obviously they cleared certain samples. You wouldn't know where it came from.
Yeah,
you wouldn't know Breakwater. You wouldn't know all these records that they created these massive hits with, or Cola Bottle Baby, etc. So
well, I have a record out today called Quickie, and I did it with this hip hop artist Mardal that I'm producing, and the original lyric for it was I was looking at you, looking at me, looking at you, looking at me, looking at you, looking at me, and I think you want to screw or something like that, and then randomly. I'm listening to Spotify, and there's a Green Velvet record with something similar to that. Randomly, like comes on a playlist, and I'm like, what the fuck? I thought somebody jacked my thing. So I immediately call her up and be like, we can't do that. It's already, like, there's somebody too close in our genre who's done something that's too close and similar to those lyrics. There's no way we're putting this record out.
Oh, that's cool.
And so we went back and we rewrote the lyrics. I'm like, we can come up with more lyrics in the world.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Because I was like, the last thing we want to do is like, we did this. I had no idea that record existed, but if that becomes a thing, what are we going to beef with Green Velvet over a record that like we could have just rewrote? It's not like we sampled something.
Yeah. But I think that's where we're at now with what's a lot of the music that's happening today. It's just there's an abundance of producers, there's an abundance of DJs, and obviously there's a lot of kids making music is easily more accessible today. Or you can do it easier, but it's a little lack of creativity. I always used to say, like, if you wanted to make a record back in the day, you really had to want to produce and make a record, meaning you either had to invest in studio time, spend thousands of dollars studio time, or you had to invest in hardware and had to buy samplers and you had to buy reverbs and delays. Everything that's in a computer, you had to physically buy. And that shit was not cheap. So in order for you to make a record, you really wanted to do it. Now it's like, let's make a beat. And everyone.
I'm with you on all of that. because we both grew up through all that. I have my S950 Akai sampler and my MPC 60 and all, like blah blah blah. I mean, I'd much rather be where we are right now with technology. The only thing that the technology I thought did do a service for all of us was that it really weeded out junk records to some degree. Junk records still got made, but there wasn't like, for now there's like just this endless flood of junk records because anyone can make them. Anyone can string a bunch of loops together and make a record at least one time.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at it, but because I like the modern production much better. I remember going to studios to cut, like when I was in rock bands, to cut rock songs, and you're in there, and I felt the monkey on my back with that meter running. Like you're paying, as a kid, you're paying $100 an hour, which is like a lot of money for a kid.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm in there trying to play my solo, or I'm with the drummer, can't get it that day, or the singer's like, and it's a different animal. Like I just did a 5-song EP with a band who, they're not a professional band. It's a passion project, but they wanted to track the drums live. So we got a room in Williamsburg at Mission Sound, and I got a drum tech for the session, and I brought in Mario McNulty, who's an amazing engineer. He did David Bowie's last record, to do the drum tracking with me because I'm not a drum tracking engineer. I don't have that skill, but I produced the rest of the stuff. But there's a lot of weight on that. The drummer, I was like, if this drummer doesn't come in, if he can't. And we only did 2. I think we did a day, but maybe a day or no, it was one day. No, it was maybe 2 days. But the days are expensive. It's $1,000 a day.
Yeah,
regardless of what you do. Yeah. So if you come in and you're just not good, there's many days where I wake up and I'm like, I'm not good today.
Well, I mean, to touch on being not good, that's what like Mutt Lange hated the way the drummer from Def Leppard drum. That's why so I have the multis, and all the tracks in there are all programmed drums. So he chopped them up, synced them, and then overlaid like Lindrum snares,
right.
And he would program on top of Def Leppard's drums, because he just could not stand loosey-goosey, and he just couldn't, And this
that's like Lars. That's the Metallica sound, right? Because Lars's drumming was so sloppy that like when everyone else was getting tighter and tighter, he just apparently was too sloppy for. Was it Bob Rock? I don't know.
Rock.
But they started sampling his kick drums and programming that, or using the sampled sounds, because it was just too all over the place. It's funny to see them there.
Funny, Bob Rock was in that the Payolas. Remember? He was actually, that was him.
It's funny. There's a lot of cats in the Payolas that I like. That I call out when they try to come at you for things, but I don't want to call them out in public.
No, he was in the band the Payolas.
Oh, I thought you meant like the Payolas with the studios and everybody else.
He was in a band called the Payolas, Bob Rock, and there was a song. I remember that's when I really started getting into. It was in You Got the Touch, and then it was in a movie. I think it was in that Nicolas Cage movie, Valley Girl.
Valley Girl.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Bob Rock. But
that's some funny. That's some funny shit.
I tracked Morningwood at Magic Shop before it shut down. That's when I produced their record, Diamonds and Studs. And that was an amazing, because they had an Olympic console. And that was 2 days or 3 days of tracking drums. But, at that time, the drummer was insanely sick, super tight. And I just went in and just, in Pro Tools, just with a click, just moved everything over and just locked it up visually. I didn't use Drumagog or anything like that. But, usually when I'm tracking drums, or when I did track drums with bands, if the drummer couldn't play with a click, I just didn't want to. I'm like, dude, you got to play with a click.
Well, yeah, I mean,
and
that's a given for me now. I mean,
didn't want to. They were like, no.
I'm not doing a ton of rock records anymore, really. I mean, I do them, but in terms of, if I'm going to do a rock record, the drummer has to be somebody who inspires me, and they have to be able to play with the click, because there's no way that I can, or they have to have an endless budget. You know what I'm saying? Because if you have an endless budget, then you can do 5,000 takes, and it can take us a month as long as you're paying for it. And I'm not doing music just for money, for commerce, but like if you don't have your shit together, for all of us to sit around while you're trying to get a clean take, I'd rather just bring in a session drummer if the drummer's just not playing it, just can't do it. But some people are great live, they're just not great for the studio.
Yeah, exactly. That's a lot of people.
Did you play in bands when you were a kid?
No, not at all. No, but I did.
You were a graffiti head, but you always.
I was a graffiti head. I loved band. Like I would go watch hardcore bands at Wetlands, like Alpha Blood, OSB. I
used to go to the hardcore Super Bowl. Remember that at L'Amour's?
L'Amour East. No,
L'Amour East. I saw Slayer there. That was great.
I was a little bit too young for that, but I would hang out with like Saab from Marauder, HR from Bad Brains. Like I would. What's funny, when I met HR from Bad Brains, I had no idea who he was. I was just in Brooklyn at a warehouse getting ready to go tagging and bombing with friends of mine, and he just happened to be there. So yeah, it's interesting how I kind of felt. I was in a scene where the graffiti scene had so many different types of people. So you have hip hop heads, house heads, hardcore heads, punk rock heads, and the only thing we had in common is we would get together and we're in a crew and we would go bombing, but we all loved different things. So we would meet up, and one day we'll be like, oh, let's go meet up with Dev or this person at Wetlands or Sticky Mice or this or whatever. And that's how we would congregate. But, that's how I met a lot of people from different scenes from just doing art.
Yeah.
So, but I grew up listening to everything. Like I'm the youngest of 6 siblings, and I grew up, like one brother was into like KMFDM, Revolting Cox, Ministry, all the Wax Track stuff. My other brother was into early hip hop, obviously, Jazzy Jazz and, all the all the early shit. And then my sister was into Boston ELO and all the rock and progressive rock, and my other brother's into new wave. So, post punk. So I grew up with all that stuff. And then when they left the house, they left me with all their records because that was a format they bought in.
Right.
So they didn't take it with them. They just left it. So I was left with just a mass array of music for me to really consume, and then house music, when I found it, that was my sound print. And I said, okay, this is mine. The same way they had their own things they were into, even though I was influenced by it and I loved it, house music became what was synonymous to me, like this art is mine.
It's funny because I listened to all of that, all of those, like as you named each one of those things that your siblings listened to, I was into all of those things as a phase in my musical lexicon. Yeah. And it wasn't like when I was into industrial, and industrial was very going to techno. I used to go to this club in Long Island called Voodoo, which ended up being Caffeine. And when I would go to Voodoo was the industrial club, and the DJ was DJ Slave, and he would play all night long. And we would, with our leather jackets, and I had long hair and our combat boots, and we would, dance to this hard driving electronic, whatever. It was the best. But then that became, Caffeine with Micro and John Trepp got involved, and who else was there? I want to say, I don't think Kioki was there. It was Frankie Bones would play, they got people
Frankie
like that.
Bones would play there. The Chocolate Factory guys, I think Samir and Joski, I think, would play there.
But that's where, like, I really solidified, starting with industrials, where I solidified my love for dance music and dance music culture. It was, like Nitsa Rev, Front 242, Skinny Puppy, like...
My Life with the Thrill Kill Cole.
All that stuff. You would go and just like Ministry, even the heavy stuff. You go from like really danceable things like 9 Inch Nails to almost hardcore stuff, and you'd be on the dance floor with people.
Well, what's funny about all that is, me being a house head, I realized everything kind of has a connection. So 9 Inch Nails, even though you see Trent Reznor and he has a band on stage, I knew, when I found out, it was just a man with Studio Vision Pro and a computer.
Remember Studio Vision Pro?
Yeah. And I was like, okay, so this is essentially one dude kind of doing this stuff,
Right.
just like house music, and it is, or just like Prince with a Lindrum and a synthesizer. So it kind of all made sense to me, and I was like, okay, this is electronic music. Like it is what it is. Yeah, there's different lanes. Some things are more soulful. This is more metallic, but it's kind of all. This is the family tree, and everyone branches off, and does their thing. But that's why I mentioned to everything,
That's where I fell in love with club culture in the sense of that type of freedom where you were going from a rock show or a rock environment where you faced the stage and you participated either in a mosh pit or in the direction of the stage diving, facing the band and all that, to being in a club where you were the DJ was really feeding off the dancer's energy. And as a b-boy, bringing that to a club and like knowing what it means to like bring dancing and that energy to a club, that's really for me where the love of electronic music. Also, the fact that you didn't have to be in a band. Because I had grown up in bands where you've got 4 or 5 guys, and if it always falls apart, and there's always one guy is a problem. Shows are. And I was like, wait, I can get I bought my first drum machine was an R8, the Roland R8, and I had a Korg wave station, and I was making industrial in high school. I think the name of the band I had was called Mind Conception, and there was a singer and myself, and I was doing all the early production stuff. And that was where the same thing, I fell in love with that autonomy, being able to like just have the whole vision myself and not have to wait for someone else to say that's okay.
Yeah.
I was just making all the music. He would write lyrics with me and do his vocals, and we were this like hard industrial band. Yeah. But the club culture thing is really what drew me to, house music and industrial and techno, and then drum and bass, jungle and drum and bass and breakbeat and all these other forms. It was the club culture that made me fall in love with it, and being able to go and express yourself on the dance floor, not just be facing the DJ. The facing the DJ thing came for us after EDM kind of broke. But
yeah, same here. I mean, for me, growing up listening to all this type of music, and then finally discovering house music, and claiming it to be mine, like, oh, this is mine. That's when, like, I would cut school, like I was in elementary school. I would leave school and it was across the street from my house. So I would run from lunch, where I guess we played kickball, or that's what I remember. And I would sneak out and run across the street to my house to listen to John Robinson Midday Mix on WBLS. Because that way I knew that was the only time I can hear during the day house music, and I would hear John Robinson play, and that's the first time I heard, Those Guys Tonight or Gypsy Woman and all these records. I was like, what? Wow. And then I would get on the train and go to Rock and Soul and they were like, oh, we don't have that. We don't got that record yet. And I would bring in tapes of like, what's this song? Disciple. I would listen to DJ Disciple, and it was
Mantronics.
Like, oh yeah, Curtis, Mantronics, all that. It was like, but Mantronics is even way like earlier as well, and his stuff was super influential. And there's a song that I'm doing on my album that is really Mantronic-esque based, because he was doing early freestyle, but it was super soulful.
Yeah.
Super soulful.
I'm surprised freestyle hasn't come back in some way or another, just because of the, everyone's always like, I'm coming back with some freestyle records, and I'm like, I'm waiting to hear for them.
I know I'm doing a few joints on my album, that one in particular with Lauren Hashin, the Rock's wife. That is, she sounds crazy. She sounds incredible, and it's so legit that I have to now make it a little bit more contemporary, because it sounds like so fucking legit, like it sounds like 87, 88. Now I just gotta make it 2021.
Nobody man in my world. I'm down for that. I always feel like there's gonna be this sort of like new freestyle resurgence at some point when people discover it as if it's like a new piece of cheese. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm working with this girl Maluka from Uptown, and she wanted to do. She was like, she's from Uptown. She's like, yo, we want to do some Bronx Latin freestyle, the fever shit. I'm like, let's do it. And Latin hip hop, because they called it Latin hip hop in the beginning when it first. So it had phases. It went from, you notice all the artists early on, from Joyce Sims to Hanson and Davis, Niobe were all black, and then it became Puerto Rican, and it became Italian, like white.
Yeah.
It was, like all the like everything else, it has its transitions. But it came from the Bronx. It was uptown, man. It was literally, they call it Latin hip hop.
I talked to Eclipse about that a bunch. He's, the difficulty of being black in the dance music industry now. I know he has his own vision on that, but it's funny with a lot of the origins, the people who were involved initially, how it's become such a, I don't know, just a whitewashed historical perspective on what the music is. People think about techno, they think it's coming from Germany. And people think it's, that gets back to our earlier conversation.
Well, I mean, Germany has played a huge part in it, but if we want to go to its origins, it's definitely, in the techno, in the definition of techno that we know and understand, it's definitely black and from Detroit. So we can't disregard every other place that's played a part in it. But the origins, we know where it came from, and yes, we should make sure that the narrative stays and it doesn't get diluted or lost or changed, because that's what happens. I think David Guetta, when there was a news article and somebody called him the Godfather of House or whatever.
Right. I remember that.
I don't know verbatim what it was said, but to me, it was his responsibility to say, thank you for this accolade, and then educate. Because he knows better, and he knows what he should say to things like that. We can't erase Frankie Knuckles. We can't erase, Ron Hardy. We can't erase anyone that was before us, because they cemented and they planted the seeds for what we do. Yeah. So, and you can't just make, just erase the shit and then rewrite history.
I think the hard part is that dance music is so transient and so quick that the lineage that, let's say, a hip hop or a rock have been able to establish, the Rock Hall of Fame, the Hip Hop Hall of Fame, these like classic, iconic tributes to people who have put so much into a genre, so to speak, right? That, not to say that we need that in dance music, but we do need some sort of way of making the culture a little bit less disposable, because the records have had a significant effect on culture, but then nobody pays tribute to that in any way. Hip hop culture changed the face of fashion, right? Yeah. That became, not only did it have it change the face of music, hip hop taking over the airways that rock used to maintain. Yeah, but you can see the lineage. People know that this person brought up this person, came from this person, and there's a history. I don't feel like there's any. It's not that there isn't a history. It's that dance music was so delineated so quickly into all these micro genres that it's very difficult to tie them all together. If you are into minimal techno, how do you know that that's the same? Where did it come from in terms? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but hip hop's in a unique position because it has culture around it in the way of like breakdancing, b-boying, graffiti, rapping and house music, and is a different, and it comes obviously as to me, it's house music is like disco's revenge, right? So it morphed from a clandestine underground gay culture disco into what we have today as house, and it's always been shunned because of it being gay or this being that and that. So dance music is so broad. What's unique about hip hop, though, is that it's become such a mainstay and it's become pop music, but it's the only genre of music that borrows from every genre. Hip hop can borrow from country, make a country record. It can borrow from electronic music. It could borrow from house. It could borrow from this. It's still hip hop. That's what's funny. So hip hop's in a really interesting position that it's the only genre of music that is all genres of music, literally.
Right, and continue to morph, because as new things get discovered, it just pulls from those things.
But it borrows from everything. Like, it takes hip hop, takes from, classic funk and soul, from jazz, from country, from electronic music. It's like, that's what hip hop is. It's an
yeah.
So it's interesting to me that dance music isn't the same way, but maybe it's because it's too, there is, in hip hop, there's more of a sense of like, a lifestyle around it, as there's not really a sense of a lifestyle around house music. You know, you can't really.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do agree with you. Not like 99% of it. I just think that there is a culture around house music and different sorts of dance music. It's just that we don't have the same vernacular. Like hip hop prides itself on the 5 elements of hip hop that make the whole thing hip hop. It's not just the music. It's not just the DJ. It's not just the MC. It's the dancer. It's the graffiti artist. So that's always been sort of the Bible of hip hop.
Yeah, it's a lifestyle. Like that's
right. It's a lifestyle. But I do think there's a dance music lifestyle in fashion in a lot of ways. You remember? I mean, like we can point back to the Big Pants era. You can see. I just saw a picture of Armand the other day with him with these little braids in his hair, but he's got a Liquid Sky T-shirt on. I'm like, well, you know.
Yeah. So what's funny about that is hip hop can borrow that and take it, and now becomes part of hip hop culture, and it doesn't come back. So look at hip hop over the course of the years, how they borrowed Arnett's or they borrowed rave gear and went into, it stayed in hip hop. So it almost becomes like, look, Kanye can sample house music and in hip hop, and nobody knows where it came from.
Right.
And that's funny. So that's what I'm saying. Hip hop, because it's a cultural and lifestyle, it automatically becomes, oh, that's hip hop.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I wish there was more sample-based house music that wasn't just about disco and just about, bringing up funk. I wish there was another way. I mean, hip house was the only other side of that. Yeah, but that's, again, hip hop.
And there's a huge connection to that. Look, if that's, one of the points of the album I'm working on is like, you have, Craig G turned his house into home, KY Stomp, Queen Latifah did house joints, Moni Love, Grandpa's Party.
Moni Love was my
dude, like
back in the day.
On and on of many people had, a correlation between house and hip hop. I mean, when you listen to Come Into My House, Queen Latifah, or I mean, just Jungle Brothers. I mean, I'll house you. Come on, that's.
I know. I still listen to the Jungle Brothers, dude. I still put them on. I actually, because remember, keep on dancing, keep on dancing, keep on dancing. That ends up in The Prodigy. The Prodigy sampled the Jungle Brothers for that. That became a big hit from them. Or is that Asen? Did Asen do that? Asen, no, it was The Prodigy.
The Prodigy.
Early Prodigy.
On the Experience?
It was on the first one, I think.
Yeah, the Experience.
The
White Album.
The White Album, right. I listened to that. I listened to The Prodigy driving out, going somewhere this summer, listening to like the first and second album, just thinking about how, I can hear the technology, thinking about when the samplers and all that stuff, that he was using to make those records. It just really brought me back. Some of them are just crazy. Some of it just makes no sense whatsoever, but it's amazing.
Liam Howlett was somebody I absolutely admired. So he was like out of this world. And it took him, again, one dude in a studio making these records by himself.
Same with Jack Dangers from Meat Beat Manifesto. He was sort of like, Meat Beat Manifesto for me was sort of what honed me for Ming and FS. Like Meat Beat was the thing where I was like, Jack Dangers is like a production god in between house music and breakbeat music and industrial. And that sensibility, when I heard Jungle, that's where that idea for me kind of coalesced to mix this hip hop, breakbeat, drum and bass hybrid to make this experimental hip hop music. And that's kind of where the idea of Ming and FS came from, was that those production techniques, bringing them to drum and bass, which is whatever.
Yeah, dope, man. Yes.
Yo, man, this is fun.
Yeah, this is good vibes, man. We got to keep doing this. I'm here. I'm locked in the studio. So anytime you want to catch up,
I'm always here. We got to share some more stuff with the peeps. Maybe we'll do we'll share some rough things that we're working on next time.
Yeah, maybe the next time we'll do a Zoom too, and then connect the Zoom. I think you can actually live stream a Zoom and then have people log on.
We can do a Zoom, no doubt. But I think Instagram stories you can only do on your phone this way. And then I'm going to see after this if I can save it and put it up to Instagram TV or whatever that is, Insta TV. I have no idea. But we could do what I wanted to do. Give me I'm going to give it up here. I wanted to do a producers forum where we get a bunch of us together in a Zoom thing and really get into it that way, where it's not just the two of us. It's like
Yeah, a bunch of us. Yeah.
Yeah, and also bring in the elements, bring in like the different things that we're talking about, and maybe even trade some of the stuff, work on whatever. Just that's what I want to do.
Alexander, Miami. He's dope. He's a good curator, producer, and songwriter, and a singer too.
Yeah.
What's up,
you
dude?
know who I talked to this morning? Who Curtis Richardson.
Curtis, yeah. We're doing tons of stuff together, actually.
Dude, I worked with Curtis like 12 years ago, and then I reached out to this other girl, Charlie Vox, who I've done some stuff with way back in the. And then like he was like, we talked this morning, and he was like, I saw you doing something with Junior, and he was like, my whole world spun around, and we just reconnected. It's dope.
Oh, that's dope. Yeah, there's a song on my album that he wrote. That he co-wrote is sick. Like it's super, super sick. And I did another song with him and Charlie Vox as well called Freedom. Yeah, I'm gonna send you some joints jams.
We also got to trade. We talked about this, but I'm collecting all the people who can track their own vocals right now, because that's part of why I do what I do is that I'm a good vocal producer, but I can't have anybody in my studio, so I got to like teach people how to track their vocals.
Show Curtis. He needs to.
I know. He told me you were on his case about that, but I was like, Curtis, I can tell you what to buy, and I can walk you through the process. He's like, I think,
he just needs a clean signal, nice, and he knows how to control his signal with his voice, and that's it. And just record. Just press record.
Don't distort. Just record. Yeah. Let's go. I am putting together a vocal production workshop that I'm doing for Pure Mind. It's going to be a multi-video, like 10, 15 video, like literally the whole thing, how you do vocal production, from everything from signal flow to, stacking to tuning to mic selection to all of that. I'm going to, that's what I'm going to start doing starting next week.
How are you tuning? Are you doing auto-tune or Melodyne?
All of it. So I'm doing, my two main tools are Melodyne and auto-tune. The quickest, nothing is 100%, but what I normally do is I try to get a lead vocal that's as close as possible to what I want, and then I Melodyne it in place with words if I have to. I'm doing many, many, many takes on the lead vocal to get that vibe that I want. Then with backgrounds and everything else, unless the singer is really pitchy, I'll tend to just use auto-tune on that stuff because I don't want it to be 100% perfect.
Are you using the old, like the real time auto tune or the?
No, I have that for UAD, but I just never find that going in with auto tune on the way in is never a good idea. My signal chain on the way in is whatever microphone you're going to use, a good preamp, and a little bit of LA2A just in case somebody does something dumb, like gets too loud on the microphone, so we don't get any distortion on the way in. It's like I use it for a whoops factor. Yeah. If it's too loud, it's going to distort on the way in anyway. But then I do all my processing post recording. But I do I usually like to get a nice thick sounding vocal on the way in and then thin it out as much as I need to control whatever. It really depends on the singer too. Like if I work with Michael Lynch, Big Mike, who's got this massive voice, he sounds like Luther Vandross, but he's so loud that the whole room resonates and it really like hums. Wow. So with him, I have to pad the microphone. I have to do a lot of stuff. Like I have to put padding over my guitar strings because they resonate with his voice, like crazy stuff. And then other people are so quiet, especially a lot of these new sort of like pop EDM style singers. They're like right here in the microphone. It's so quiet. They sound great. But like on the mic, but
they sound great with gain.
Yeah. But I'm gonna cover all that stuff too. We should do. I'm gonna do this producer one shots, like little small videos on people's tricks and tips that young producers can just kind of digest and ask questions on it.
Yeah, man, do it.
So, all right, brother, I'm gonna let you go. Have a good Friday.
You too, man. Enjoy
your
awesome.
Weekend. Be safe with the family, Junior. Speak to you soon.
Mad love. Peace.